Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be exploring excerpts from a book that's bound to make you see your relationships and maybe even yourself in a whole new light. It's called Sperm Wars by Robin Baker. And just a heads up, we're diving deep into evolutionary biology and how it shapes human sexual behavior.
You might think our relationships and choices are entirely our own, but Baker argues there's a whole other level at play. He calls it a biological strategy. And the crazy part, it often operates beneath our conscious awareness.
So we're talking about our bodies playing by rules we didn't even know existed. That's a bit unnerving, isn't it?
It is
Like, what are we even in control of? I'm already hooked. Where do we even begin to unpack this?
well, the title Sperm Wars is a good place to start. It captures the idea that even at the microscopic level,
Right.
there's this intense competition going on. Imagine different types of sperm battling it out, with the woman's body acting as the ultimate battleground. And it's not just a passive arena either. The female body can actually influence the outcome.
Okay, hold on. Before we get too deep into the microscopic battles, let's zoom out for a second. Why should we even care about this? What's the relevance to our lives today? Especially if most of us aren't exactly thinking about maximizing our offspring count.
That's a great question. Because even if you're not consciously trying to have a baby, your body's ancient wiring is still in play. It's like your biology hasn't quite caught up to modern contraception. This means even your seemingly casual choices might be influenced by these powerful evolutionary forces pushing you toward certain outcomes. Fascinating, right?
Absolutely. It makes you wonder how much free will we actually have when it comes to love and relationships. So how about we dive into some specific examples? What are some of the surprising ways this evolutionary game plays out?
Let's start with the concept of topping up sperm reserves. Men subconsciously adjust the sperm count in their ejaculate, depending on how long it's been since their last encounter.
Really? So if a guy is, let's say, a bit more active, he's not releasing as much each time.
Precisely. And if there's a longer gap between encounters, his body releases a larger army, so to speak. It's all about staying ahead of the competition, ensuring his genes are the ones that get passed on.
So even routine sex becomes this calculated act. That's wild. It's like every encounter has these hidden stakes. Okay, I have to ask, where does infidelity fit into all of this?
Baker explores this from a purely evolutionary perspective, without making any moral judgments. He points out that there's a heightened chance of infidelity during a woman's fertile window, the time when she's most likely to conceive. And interestingly, women are less likely to use contraception during these times.
Hold on. So even if a woman isn't in a committed relationship, her body might be subtly pushing her towards infidelity. Is that what you're saying?
That's one interpretation. It's like there's this ancient biological drive
Yeah.
to seek out the best possible genes for her offspring, even if it means stepping outside the bounds of her relationship.
Okay. This is already blowing my mind. And we haven't even gotten to the actual sperm wars yet. Let's talk about what's happening on that microscopic battleground. What are the different players involved?
Not all sperm are created equal. Baker describes different types: blockers,
Yeah.
killers, and egg getters.
Okay, blockers, killers. This is starting to sound like a video game. Break it down for me. What are these different types actually doing?
Imagine it like a military strategy. Blockers are the first line of defense,
Yeah.
creating a physical barrier in the woman's reproductive tract
Yeah.
to prevent other sperm from getting through.
So it's all about territory control, even at this microscopic level. Wow. What about the killers? That sounds pretty intense.
As the name suggests,
Yeah.
these guys are designed to attack and destroy rival sperm. It's
Yeah.
all about eliminating the competition.
And the egg getters, I'm guessing those are the ones that are actually trying to
Yeah.
get to the egg.
You got it. They're the ones that are focused on fertilization. But the outcome of this battle isn't just about who has the most sperm. It's about strategy, timing, and a whole host of factors we're just beginning to understand.
This is making me see every romantic encounter in a completely different light. So much strategy, so much competition. It's kind of exhausting.
But also incredibly fascinating, wouldn't you say? It makes you appreciate the intricate dance of biology and behavior that's been playing out for millennia.
Absolutely. So we've talked about topping up, infidelity, and the different types of sperm. What else is going on in this microscopic war zone?
One of the most fascinating and often overlooked players is cervical mucus.
Okay, I'm going to be honest. When I hear cervical mucus, the first thing that comes to mind isn't exactly fascinating. But I'm willing to be proven wrong. What's the big deal with this stuff?
Think of it like a bouncer at a club, carefully selecting who gets in based on certain criteria. Cervical mucus acts as this gatekeeper, protecting against infection and influencing which sperm can pass through.
So it's not just about letting sperm in, it's about selecting the best sperm. That's pretty amazing. How does it even do that?
The structure and consistency of cervical mucus
Yeah.
actually changes throughout a woman's cycle. Sometimes it's thick and impenetrable, acting as a barrier, and other times it becomes thinner and more watery, creating channels that guide sperm towards the egg.
It's like an obstacle course designed to weed out the weaklings. I never thought I'd be so captivated by cervical mucus, but here we are. This is really making me rethink everything I thought I knew about how our bodies work.
That's the beauty of exploring these topics. It challenges our assumptions and opens up a whole new world of understanding.
Absolutely. So we've got this intense competition going on, both between sperm and between individuals. But what about the potential downsides? What's the cost of all this strategizing and battling?
That's a crucial question. Because while infidelity might offer some potential genetic advantages, there are also significant risks involved, both for men and women.
I'd imagine things could get pretty messy, both emotionally and practically. What kind of risks are we talking about?
For men, there's the possibility of raising another man's child, the risk of sexually transmitted diseases, and the potential for violence from a jealous partner. For women, the risks include social repercussions, potential loss of support from their partner, and also the risk of violence.
So it's a delicate balance, to say the least. It seems like you really need to know what you're doing to play this game successfully.
Baker emphasizes the importance of judging situations correctly and responding appropriately to maximize reproductive success. It's like playing a high-stakes poker game with your genes on the line.
That's a pretty intense way to think about it. So we've got this high-stakes game going on, this constant battle for reproductive success. But what about things like masturbation and wet dreams? Where do they fit into this whole picture? They don't seem very strategic.
You might be surprised. Baker argues that even these seemingly solitary activities have an evolutionary function. For men, masturbation can be a way to ensure a fresh supply of sperm, keeping those troops ready for action. It's like a training exercise, making sure everything is in top shape for the real battle.
So if a man is anticipating potential infidelity, he might subconsciously masturbate more often to keep those killer sperm on high alert.
Exactly. And wet dreams can serve a similar purpose, although they're less controllable, of course. It's like your body's way of saying, hey, even if you're not actively seeking out a partner, let's make sure we're ready just in case.
That's pretty clever. But why all the secrecy around masturbation? And if it's such a useful tool, why wouldn't you want to advertise it?
Think about it from a strategic standpoint. If a man's partner knows his masturbation patterns, she might be able to deduce information about his sexual activity and intentions. This could give her an advantage in the sperm wars, tilting the odds in her favor.
So it's all about maintaining that element of surprise and keeping your opponent guessing. This is getting seriously complex.
And we're just scratching the surface. The more we delve into these topics, the more we realize how deeply our biology is intertwined with our behavior, even in ways we might not consciously realize.
This is making me question everything I thought I knew about relationships. Okay, I have to ask. If men are constantly trying to spread their genes, what are women doing in all of this? Are they just passive players in this game?
Not at all. In fact, women are incredibly strategic players. And this brings us to one of the most intriguing aspects of the book, the way women shop around for genes.
Okay, I'm all ears. What does that even mean?
It means that women aren't just looking for a partner to raise children with. They're also subconsciously seeking out the best possible genes for their offspring. They might be drawn to certain men for their physical attractiveness, their intelligence, or their social status, because these traits are often indicators of good genes.
So it's like they're playing a genetic lottery, trying to hit the jackpot with the best possible combination of traits for their future children.
Exactly. And they're not just passively waiting for the winning ticket to come along. They're actively seeking it out, using their intuition and their subconscious drives to guide their choices.
This is blowing my mind. It's like there's this whole hidden world of biological strategy playing out beneath the surface of our relationships.
And the deeper we dive,
Yeah.
the more fascinating it becomes.
I can't wait to see where this deep dive takes us next. But for now, let's take a short break to let all of this sink in. When we come back, we'll explore even more fascinating insights from Sperm Wars.
All right, we're back and ready to dive even deeper into the world of sperm wars. Before the break, we were talking about how women shop around for genes, which is Pretty mind-blowing concept.
It is.
But how do they actually go about doing that? What makes certain men stand out as good genetic candidates? That's where things get really interesting. Baker argues that women are drawn to certain physical features that are often indicators of good health and genetic fitness. Things like clear eyes, healthy skin and hair, a symmetrical body. These aren't just arbitrary standards of beauty. They're like billboards advertising good genes.
So it's not all about looks, but physical appearance definitely plays a role. It's like our bodies are subconsciously reading these signals and making judgments based on them.
Right.
What about beyond the purely physical? Are there other factors at play?
Absolutely. Women are also drawn to men who display signs of confidence, and social status. Think about it. These qualities suggest a man is resourceful, capable of providing for a family, and likely to be successful in navigating the challenges of life. From an evolutionary standpoint, those are pretty desirable traits to pass on to your offspring.
It's fascinating how these seemingly superficial qualities can actually be rooted in these deep-seated evolutionary drives. It's like we're all playing this game without even realizing it. So we've talked about the strategies men and women use. But what about the outliers? Where do things like homosexuality and bisexuality fit into this picture?
That's a question a lot of people have. And Baker offers a really interesting perspective. He challenges the assumption that these orientations contradict the goal of passing on your genes. He suggests that homosexual and bisexual behavior can actually be successful reproductive strategies in certain situations.
Okay. Now that's surprising. How could that possibly work?
Think about it this way. Bisexual individuals, for example, have a wider pool of potential partners, which could increase their chances of finding a compatible mate and having children. They might also be more flexible and adaptable in different social environments,
Yeah.
which could benefit their offspring.
So instead of being an evolutionary dead end, bisexuality could actually be a kind of advantage. That's really thought-provoking. But what about the risks associated with these orientations?
Of course, there are trade-offs.
Mm.
As with any strategy, Baker is very clear about that. He acknowledges that, particularly in modern society. There can be increased risks of disease and social stigma associated with homosexuality and bisexuality.
It's a reminder that even our most basic drives and desires are shaped by a complex interplay of biological and social forces. Okay, I think it's time to talk about something that's both deeply personal and often shrouded in mystery back. The female orgasm. What does Sperm Wars have to say about that?
Baker argues that the female orgasm is far more than just a pleasurable experience. It's a powerful tool that can influence the outcome of sperm war.
So, hold on, how did that work? I mean, It's not like women are consciously choosing to have orgasms based on some strategic calculation.
Right, it's not a conscious choice.
Yeah.
But Baker suggests that different types of female orgasms might serve different evolutionary purposes.
Wait, there are different types. I had no idea. Tell me more.
We often talk about orgasms because they're all the same, but there's actually a lot of variation. There are clitoral orgasms, vaginal orgasms, and blended orgasms. And Baker believes each type might play a unique role in this evolutionary game.
This is getting really intriguing. So how do these different types of orgasms factor into the sperm wars?
Well, let's start with vaginal orgasms. These involve contractions of the muscles in the vaginal walls. And Baker suggests that these contractions might actually help draw sperm up into the reproductive tract, increasing the chances of fertilization.
So a woman who has a vaginal orgasm during intercourse with a particular man is essentially giving a sperm a little boost.
That's the idea. It's like a subconscious way of saying, yes, I want your genes. On the other hand, clitoral orgasms, which focus on stimulation of the clitoris, might serve a different purpose. Remember how we talked about cervical mucus acting as a gatekeeper, selecting which sperm are allowed to pass through?
Yeah. The bouncer analogy, that one really stuck with me. What does that have to do with clitoral orgasms?
Well, Baker suggests that clitoral orgasms,
Yeah.
especially those that occur during foreplay, can actually strengthen the cervical mucus filter, making it more difficult for sperm to pass through.
Wait, so a woman who has a clitoral orgasm before intercourse is potentially making it harder for a partner's sperm to reach the egg. Why would she do that?
It might seem counterintuitive, but remember, this is all happening at a subconscious level. The woman's body might be responding to subtle cues about her partner's suitability, or it might be a way of ensuring that only the strongest, most determined sperm make it through.
This is absolutely mind-blowing. It's like our bodies are playing this incredibly complex game, making strategic decisions without us even realizing it.
Exactly. And the more we learn about these subconscious processes, the more we realize just how intricate and fascinating human sexuality truly is.
It's definitely making me question everything I thought I knew about relationships, intimacy, and even my own body. So we've got this complex interplay of orgasms, cervical mucus, sperm competition. It's a lot to keep track of.
It is.
But there's one big piece of the puzzle we haven't talked about yet: contraception. How does modern birth control fit into this whole evolutionary picture?
That's a great question. Because in a lot of ways, contraception throws a wrench in the works of these ancient evolutionary strategies. It disrupts the natural selection process and introduces a whole new set of variables.
So we're basically playing this game with a whole new set of rules, but our bodies are still operating on the old software.
In a way,
Yeah.
yes. And that can lead to some interesting conflicts. For example, Baker points out that men, even subconsciously, might be less enthusiastic about using condoms because condoms interfere with sperm competition.
Hold on. So even if a guy knows intellectually that condoms are important for preventing pregnancy and STDs, his body might be rebelling against the idea on some primal level.
It's a fascinating paradox. It's like our ancient drives are clashing with our modern understanding of health and responsibility. And this brings us to another intriguing point. There's a surprisingly high failure rate of condoms.
I've always heard that condoms are only about 85% effective. Is that really true? And if so, why is the failure rate so high?
Well, Baker raises the question of whether this high failure rate is purely accidental or if it's a subtle form of manipulation, a way for men to subconsciously increase their chances of fatherhood, even when using protection.
Wait. Are you saying that men might be subconsciously sabotaging their condom use? It's a pretty bold claim.
It's definitely a controversial topic, and Baker doesn't present it as a definitive answer. He simply poses it as a question, a possibility to consider. But it does make you wonder about the complex interplay between our conscious choices and our subconscious drives.
It's like there's this whole other level of decision-making happening beneath the surface, and we're only just beginning to understand it. This is making me rethink everything I thought I knew about safe sex. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about the different types of sperm, the role of cervical mucus, the strategic use of orgasms, the impact of contraception. It's a lot to process, but there's one more topic I want to touch on before we wrap up this part of the deep dive. Masturbation. We talked about it briefly in terms of men maintaining a fresh sperm supply, but what about women? What role does female masturbation play in this evolutionary game?
Baker suggests that female masturbation might serve several evolutionary purposes. One possibility is that it helps women to familiarize themselves with their own bodies and their sexual responses, making them more likely to achieve orgasm during intercourse, which, as we discussed, could potentially increase sperm retention.
So it's like a form of self-exploration and training, helping women to become more in tune with their bodies and their sexual potential.
Exactly. And there might be other benefits as well. For example, some researchers believe that female masturbation can help to strengthen the pelvic floor muscles, which can improve sexual satisfaction and potentially even make childbirth easier.
That makes sense. But unlike male masturbation, which seems to be primarily about maintaining a fresh sperm supply, female masturbation seems to be more about optimizing the woman's own sexual experience and potentially increasing her chances of conceiving when she chooses to.
That's a great observation, and it highlights the different ways that men and women approach reproduction, both consciously and subconsciously.
This whole deep dive has been a revelation. It's like I'm seeing the world through a completely new lens, one that reveals all these hidden biological forces shaping our desires and our behaviors. I'm definitely going to be thinking about all of this long after this deep dive is over.
I think that's the mark of a truly thought-provoking exploration, when it stays with you, challenges your assumptions, and makes you want to keep learning and exploring.
Absolutely. So much for taking a casual dip into this book. It's turning into a full-blown underwater expedition. But we've surfaced for air for now. We'll be back to continue this deep dive in just a moment. Okay, we're back. And I gotta say, my head is still spinning from all these mind-blowing insights from Sperm Wars. It's like this book has unlocked a secret code to understanding human behavior, and I'm just trying to catch up.
It definitely challenges a lot of our assumptions about relationships and sexuality, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's like peeling back the layers of what we think we know and revealing this whole hidden world of biological strategies and subconscious motivations.
Yeah.
Before the break, we were talking about the potential evolutionary reasons behind female masturbation, which was already pretty surprising. But I'm curious, are there any other unexpected behaviors that Baker explores in this book? I feel like we've only just scratched the surface.
Well, Baker also dives into the world of nocturnal orgasms. He suggests that both men and women experiencing these involuntary orgasms during sleep could be a way to optimize sperm and egg quality.
Hold on, so you're telling me, even when we're sleeping, our bodies are still playing this reproductive game. It's like it never stops.
It seems so.
But how could something like a nocturnal orgasm actually improve the chances of conception?
Baker proposes that for men, nocturnal emissions, or wet dreams, might help flesh out older sperm, making way for fresh, more viable sperm. And for women, nocturnal orgasms could potentially enhance cervical mucus flow, making it easier for sperm to travel to the egg.
Wow. It's like our bodies are working overtime even when we're completely oblivious. This is making me wonder if we have as much control over our reproductive destinies as we think, or if we're ultimately just puppets of our biology.
That's a profound question, and one that Baker doesn't attempt to answer definitively. He acknowledges that modern society has introduced a whole new set of factors that can influence our reproductive choices, from contraception to social norms and personal values. But he also suggests that understanding our evolutionary heritage can help us make more informed decisions about our sexual behaviors and relationships.
So it's not about being enslaved by our biology, but rather using this knowledge to empower ourselves.
Exactly. By understanding the forces that shape our desires and our behaviors, we can become more conscious and intentional in our choices. We can choose to embrace certain aspects of our biological programming, or we can choose to resist them. But either way, the choice is ultimately ours.
I love that perspective. It's like instead of being at the mercy of our ancient instincts, we can actually harness that knowledge and use it to create the relationships and experiences we truly desire. This book is seriously making me rethink everything.
I think this is one of the most valuable things about exploring these ideas. It challenges our assumptions, expands our understanding of ourselves, and encourages us to approach relationships and sexuality with more awareness and intention.
Absolutely. And speaking of expanding our understanding, Baker doesn't shy away from addressing some of the more sensitive aspects of human sexuality, does he?
Right.
I'm thinking specifically about his exploration of prostitution and rape, which I imagine might be controversial for some readers.
You're right. Those are very sensitive topics. And it's important to emphasize that Baker approaches these issues from a purely evolutionary perspective, seeking to understand the potential biological roots of these behaviors without condoning or justifying them in any way.
That's a crucial distinction. So from an evolutionary standpoint, how does Baker explain something like prostitution? It seems counterintuitive that a woman would engage in sex with multiple partners, potentially risking her health and safety.
Baker suggests that in certain environments, prostitution might have offered women a way to secure resources, protection, or access to a wider pool of potential mates, increasing their chances of reproductive success. He emphasizes that this is not a value judgment, but rather an exploration of potential evolutionary factors that might have contributed to this behavior in the past.
It's a reminder that our understanding of morality and social norms has evolved over time, and that what might seem unthinkable today might have served a different purpose in a different context. What about rape? That's obviously a horrific crime, but does Baker attempt to explain it from an evolutionary perspective?
He does, but he's extremely careful to emphasize that rape is a violent act, and that his exploration is in no way intended to condone or excuse this behavior. He simply poses the question of whether there might be some evolutionary basis for this drive, particularly in certain situations, where men might have felt a pressure to spread their genes, even through force or coercion. He acknowledges that this is a highly controversial topic, and one that requires great sensitivity and nuance.
It definitely makes you confront some uncomfortable truths about human nature and the potential for darkness that exists within us. But I appreciate that Baker doesn't shy away from these difficult conversations. It's important to explore these issues with open minds and a willingness to grapple with the complexities.
I agree. And ultimately, I think Baker's goal is to shed light on the full spectrum of human sexual behavior, both the good and the bad, in order to gain a deeper understanding of ourselves and our evolutionary heritage.
This whole deep dive has been a whirlwind of information and insights. We've explored the battleground of sperm wars, the strategic deployment of different sperm types, the role of cervical mucus as a gatekeeper, the complexities of the female orgasm, the subtle cues of mate selection, and the impact of modern contraception on our ancient drives. We've even touched on the sensitive topics of prostitution and rape from an evolutionary perspective.
It's been a journey that's challenged our assumptions, expanded our knowledge, and hopefully left us with a greater appreciation for the intricate tapestry of human sexuality.
Absolutely. Sperm Wars is one of those books that stays with you long after you finish reading it. It makes you question everything you thought you knew about relationships,
Totally agree.
attraction, and even your own body. It's a powerful reminder that we're not just rational beings making conscious choices. We're also driven by these ancient biological forces that have been shaping our behavior for millennia.
And understanding these forces can be both empowering and humbling. It can help us to make more informed choices, but it also reminds us that we're part of something much larger than ourselves. A grand evolutionary story that continues to unfold.
Well, deep divers. This has been an absolutely incredible journey. We've explored some pretty deep waters today, but I hope you've come away with a renewed sense of curiosity, a thirst for knowledge, and perhaps even a new perspective on the complexities of human nature. And as always, we'd love to hear your thoughts. What were your biggest aha moments from this deep dive? What questions are still swirling in your mind? Share your reflections with us on social media. We're always eager to continue the conversation. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.